Hello, I'm Georgie Coleridge Cole, SheerLuxe's founder and CEO, and welcome to today's In Conversation With podcast. I am just delighted to be joined by Rosemin Manji, one of Dubai's most loved tastemakers, entrepreneurs, influencers, presenters, ambassadors to several amazing causes. You're really like the fairy godmother of the luxury industry in the Middle East, aren't you?
Well, first of all, welcome to Dubai.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for having me. I feel like when you say that introduction, it just is a reflection about how old I am or how much experience I'm bringing, because I think, I've been very lucky to work in different sectors. And I think that comes down to experience.
We're very lucky to be sitting here talking to you today. I'd love to start with you talking us through your incredible career. You've really done some amazing things. You're involved in so many amazing causes. You are really the godmother of luxury. But can you tell us a bit about your early life and upbringing and what that was like? So and your heritage.
And my heritage. Yeah, my family is from East Africa. We're Indian origin. They had to leave East Africa due to back then we had Idi Amin as a dictator, and he told all the South Asians to leave. At that point, my dad was finishing his master's and just started working in the UK. My mom and my sister was 3 at the time. And, they lived in joint family households. And so, my dad was trying to build this great life for my family. And so all of this happened in the early 70s. And so from the UK, they all ended up from East Africa, they all ended up going to Canada. My dad left the UK and ended up joining them in Canada as well. And, it was actually the start of really having examples of people that work so hard and actually having entrepreneurs as
role models.
And honestly, I never really understood until I turned 40, and I actually I was given this incredible opportunity to speak at the House of Lords at Parliament in London. And they asked me to write a 5-minute speech on my history and how, and my background. And it was actually this great point of reflection, because I was trying to understand, how did I become the way I am? Or how is my thinking so particular? And I realized that it was because I saw my mom and dad literally come with 2 suitcases and a 3-year-old child, which is my sister, and starting from scratch. And education and all of that stuff was to really start and learn English again and come from a warm climate to freezing cold and in Canada. I look back going, I can't believe they went through this and started their business. And, my brother and I were born, years later, because my parents didn't want to bring up a family until they could afford to give us a proper home and education and all of that. And so my sister and I actually have 11-year age difference between us. But it was an example of watching them build a business, and I didn't come from a 9-to-5 environment. And so as much as my school friends had that, where their parents would come home at 5 or 6 and they would have dinner, I was lucky if my parents came home. My mom would come home literally for a few hours after school to feed us and do homework or whatever it was. But my dad, I would be lucky if I saw him at 10, 11 at night.
What did they do?
So my parents' first business was a corner store. And then
in Canada,
in a small town called London, Ontario. And it was funny because
what do you sell in a corner store?
Corner store was equivalent to a 7-Eleven, I guess, or it was magazines and,
dream when you're a child.
Candy bars and all of that. But for me, it's funny because I look back, and because my dad had, I guess great taste at that point, he loved art, he loved fashion. So we actually had the best magazines. It was interior magazines. It was fashion, Town and Country, W, Vogue, Harper's Bazaar. That's the magazines I was exposed to. So I don't know if that's a good thing being a kid, but I was more attracted to that fashion photography. Having an older sister, she would grab these, Vogue, W. And when W, I don't know if you ever remember the old issues, but they look like a newspaper. They were folded. I mean, how iconic was that, right? And so that's what I was exposed to. But as my dad's business excelled, from having the corner store, he bought the building. And from having the building, he bought the corner. And then from having the corner, he started buying houses on the street until, he ended up getting into property. But his first business was this corner store.
And what did your mother do?
My mom was a teacher in East Africa. She came to Canada and she helped him build the business. And so she went from helping him with like the property management. And then, and then later she followed her passion of doing like reflexology and teaching and everything else. But she was really pivotal in building the business.
Amazing. So you had a happy childhood in Canada?
Had a happy childhood. I'm very grateful growing up in Canada because it was such a multicultural environment. I look at my friends even now that are like the school friends I grew up with, where we'd walk to school and everyone came from diverse backgrounds. And that's how we learned about each other's cultures and food and family values. But I give the example of growing up, having parents who were immigrants, because I think it's reflective of my work ethic and discipline. And I've seen what it takes to come from literally 2 suitcases to building what we have now. And it was actually my first exposure into fashion, was seeing these magazines and beautiful pieces and having this visual art, which was such a feast for the eyes. Amazing. And having a sister who had great taste. So I would like raid her closet.
Love it. That's the dream of a big sister, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you grew up in Canada, and then what about university? Where did you study?
University, I went to London College of Fashion, which is University of the Arts. I graduated from fashion management, specialized in luxury goods marketing. And it was a second year. So I was the second batch of graduates. So it was actually a really interesting time at London College of Fashion because they just introduced this program. I went for the interview. They were like, there's only 50 students in the class. And it's broken up in 25. So it's class A, class B. So you're really only with that group of 25 students. And I think I was just very lucky because the program was new. The professors and the dean of the program were so interested to have feedback with the classes. So we were learning economics, but our case studies were on Estee Lauder or Marks and Spencer, for example. But we're still learning.
Fascinating.
But we're
surely
still
we're
learning.
going to do economics. Yeah.
But we were still learning like the principles of everything from computer science to economics was a big class because it was really understanding the economy and the scale and how these businesses worked, from like a luxury goods business to something a little bit more mass like Marks and Spencer.
Fascinating. So you left London College of Fashion, and where did you end up next?
So when I was at London College of Fashion, I actually got accepted to FIT in New York before I went to London, which is Fashion Institute of Technology in New York. And they had a very similar program of fashion management. And when I got accepted to University of Arts or London College of Fashion, I think growing up in Canada, New York was like a hop, skip, and a jump, right? It was like an hour flight. You go all the time. And I just always thought I would end up in New York City. Like, I love that city. Like, my heart, like, I land in New York and I just fall in love with that city. So when I got accepted to the UK, I was like, let me just go to the UK. I'm going to be there for 3 years and I will move to New York and follow my fashion dreams. I landed in London and I made a very conscious decision because I literally, heart and soul, thought I was only going to be there for 3 years. So I made a very conscious decision that I would intern and learn and do as much as I can. Now, I was at a time in the UK where the pound and the dollar were 3 to 1. So whatever my parents were giving me to pay for my accommodation and tuition and just a little bit of spending, it wasn't enough money. And I didn't have the heart to tell my parents because my mom was working like crazy to just give me this incredible opportunity. And my dad was working like crazy to give me this incredible opportunity to study in the UK. And I didn't have the heart to tell them that things are really expensive. And it's not like the England that my dad was growing up in, so many years ago. Everything was expensive. So I started doing these part-time jobs. And these part-time jobs included, in the course of the 3 years, I worked at Prada on Sloane Street for a few months. For like half a year, I worked at Burberry as a showroom assistant and then a showroom model, literally serving coffees to the wholesale buyers. And I started doing as many internships or part-time jobs. One of my favorite jobs was Harry Blaine's assistant at Blaine's Fine Art, which was on Bruton Street. It was Harry's first art gallery. And I was the receptionist on Saturdays. And that was my exposure into the art world. Like every Saturday, he would teach me about art. And so being at school during that time was this incredible exposure. And I think there was a very pivotal moment in my second year where I attended a talk by Tom Ford and we talked about this. It was at the Costume Society and I was literally the youngest person in the room. I begged for this ticket, made a donation to the Costume Society, literally begged for a ticket for them. And I ended up sitting next to the PR director for Gucci. And at the end, when the lights turned on and Tom and Colin McDowell were speaking on stage, this wonderful woman named Kat looked at me and she goes, "Who are you? You're the youngest person in this room." And I said, "Why are you here?" And I said, like have written essays on Gucci Group and, Mr. Ford and Domenico De Sole. And like, I just wanted to hear him speak and, I'll do anything to work for him. And she goes, you know what? You're really young, but send me your resume in the morning and let's see if we can get you like a work experience. I came home, wrote this resume and emailed her. She invited me for an interview the next day at 3 p.m. I went to the office in Mayfair.
What year are we in?
This was, oh God, like 2000, I think, second year university. And I was working as like a PR intern, and my life just changed because I was exposed to this incredible world, learning how PR and marketing worked, how a showroom worked. And at that time, it just tells you how old I am, but like it was all about faxing. So you'd fax the reviews to Mr. Ford and, wake up at 5 a.m., get all the newspapers, cut them perfectly, and then scan them after the shows. And can
I just ask, I mean, he was amazing then. I mean, now
and he's still amazing.
Wow. And we were talking the other day about the incredible new collection via creative director Peter Hawkins. And, God, Tom Ford needs no sort of approval from me, but he's incredible. What was he like then? What did you learn from him?
So he was looking for a second assistant, and then, I would be the one, because I was the intern, running to the office to drop things off. And fast forward, he offered me a job. I was in my second year university. I asked my parents. They said no. My parents said, we worked very hard. You're going to get that certificate. Like, you're going to graduate university. And if he still wants you can work. And fast forward, I handed in my dissertation on a Thursday, and I was working with Mr. Ford on Monday morning, and my life changed. And I learned, it was literally his office, Whitney Bromberg, who is Peter Hawking's wife, actually. Yeah. And she was his PA. I was a second assistant in one kind of glass room. And the floor across was Peter Hawkins, who was assistant menswear designer with John Ray, and Frida Giannini was there, Alessandro Faccinetti, all these incredible, Alessandro Michele was working as a handbag designer with Frida Giannini. Like, it was such an incredible time. Yeah. And I always say the power of Tom Ford, because all of us, I truly believed, learned so much. Like, I learned more from him working with him in those years than I did in university.
What did you learn?
I learned people management, brand management. I learned how to look at an item and see if it's commercial, editorial, how to make it work for the consumer. His power of makeup and hair, and how he's so involved in the styling.
I always remember when I was younger reading an article with him talking about how women should apply their makeup. It's always stuck with me.
He's just brilliant, right? And he sells this look. And I think the other factor, which I really learned from him now as a boss, because he obviously, during that time, he became vice president of Gucci Group, and he had all these brands under him, from Stella McCartney to Boucheron, he was creative director of Saint Laurent, is that he was so decisive. And I think as a boss, that is such a great skill, is to take in information from everyone. So he would discuss with everyone in a design team, and at the end he made the final call. And I think as a boss, you have to be responsible and take that final call, and to give direction and leadership. And that's truly what I learned from him. So it was such an incredible time. And so when we talk about Whitney becoming, starting this, flower box, and she's so successful, and Peter becoming the creative director of Tom Ford, it makes me so proud. I was just like,
God, what have all the other people that work for him gone on to do?
Right?
Can I come and do an internship, Tom Ford?
But look at everyone. Christopher Bailey used to work for him in the design team. He became the creative director of Burberry. Alessandra Faccinetti was at Gucci. She did women's wear after him. Frida Giannini was like from bags to creative director. Yeah. John Ray went to, I think, Dunhill. Stefano Pilati was obviously at Saint Laurent, and then now Stefano just is launching his capsule collection with Fendi right now. So if you just look at all the people that have
learned from him,
learned from Tom, or been in Tom's world, or also Tom, just to recognize talent. I think that's the other, to be a leader and recognize talent to build your team. Yeah, that's incredible.
And then for them to go on and just achieve all of that, it's just it's incredible when you actually stop and think about it.
Claire Wright Keller was knitwear designer at Gucci. Her and I used to travel together like every week.
Was she?
She was, went to Pringle, then she went to Givenchy, she did Meghan Markle's dress. I mean, she's so talented. She's an incredible mom. I just remember her literally just on a flight, about juggling her kids and working, and it's just these power women that you're surrounded by. And so, I get very proud to be around colleagues that have excelled and have done really well.
So you were second assistant to Tom, and what happened after that?
So after that, there was the takeover of Caring Group, and all of us kind of all went in different directions. He took some time off, and I was really young, so I couldn't take time off. I had to work, and I had these incredible opportunities of, people that had offered me jobs, and I didn't know where I wanted to go. I didn't know if I wanted to go to. I went to New York for a few interviews. I went everywhere. I just was trying to explore what I wanted to do, and then Gucci offered me to move to Italy with the design team for the women's wear. And I remember calling Mr. Ford, and I was like, "What should I do?" And he goes, "Rosemin, I lived in Milan, experience Milan while you're young, like just take the leap." And so literally it was between Milan and New York. And I think these are those pivotal moments where your life can go in any direction. And so sometimes I'm like, I just wish I did I wish I took the leap and went to New York, but I took the leap and went to Milan. And so I lived in Milan for a year with the Gucci design team.
And was it mad living there?
It was, there was so much change happening in the company. And so you really were just working 24/7 because there's so much pressure to deliver this incredible collection. Also, I was trying to learn Italian. Like it was a lot. Like everything was just new. And so I think I was just so used to the safety of London and knowing my crew.
And what was your role?
So my role was I'm assistant to the creative director of women's wear.
Right.
So I was really involved in all the meetings and seeing that whole design process. But it was a lot of pressure for the creative director at that time to deliver. I mean, as you can imagine, to be right after Tom Ford.
Yeah. And so you were there for a year?
I went for a year, and then there was another change of leadership, and then the offices were getting moved to Florence. And so before I renewed my contract, I got this offer from a headhunter for Juicy Couture, which had just been bought out by Liz Claiborne. It was at that time in the early 2000s valued at like $1 billion on the New York Stock Exchange. And I just remember thinking, okay, I love Gucci so much. But the thing is, I have such a weakness, right? Like every time I'd get my paycheck, I'd be shopping in like the store the next day. Like I just had such a weakness. So I got this crazy job offer from Juicy Couture. And I thought, you know what, maybe I should just be a little bit more business focused. I had this great opportunity. It was 3 of us that there was the GM, myself, and an office manager from LA, from the Juicy team from LA, who came to London. And we literally had carte blanche. They were like, set up the first office outside of New York and LA, in Europe. You're going to handle the European market and Middle East and kind of emerging markets really like across Europe. And I was like, okay, what's my job? And they were like, we just want you to like, just rebrand Juicy because it's really known as a tracksuit brand. We're opening several categories and we just want you to like add your magic touch.
And this was sort of Juicy 2.0, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was this new way.
That huge.
Yeah, it was all about the tracksuit before.
Yeah.
And so they're like, we just need you to look at this collection and, what can you do? And it was and I give the example of Juicy Couture again, because working with Tom Ford was like working for an entrepreneur, right? He's the one making the decisions. He's the one setting the tone. Fast forward, I moved to Juicy Couture. It's 3 of us setting up this company, outside of the US. So we chose the showroom because we wanted to elevate the brand. So we chose Mayfair. We had a beautiful showroom. Again, because I had a trained eye from working with Tom Ford, a collection of like 800 pieces of this kind of prestige mass brand. I was able to cut it down and edit it and curate it into a collection that we could present to Vogue and a Tatler and an Elle and a Glamour and a Marie Claire. And so I started realizing that was kind of the skill set that I developed. And on top of all of that, I had this great database of celebrities working at Gucci. So I started just gifting and seeding. And this was, now we call it influencer marketing. At that time, it was like seeding these celebrities. And all of a sudden,
it's the same thing, really.
It's the same thing, right? And it was like now it was like before we were doing that 20 years ago. And so
without Instagram.
Yeah, without Instagram. And so all of a sudden, everyone was wearing Juicy. Like Gwyneth Paltrow wore it to like a Hamptons polo match or like a lunch, wearing the striped
I feel like
dress.
I need to dig into the archives and find all these pictures you were
There were so many. There was Kate Moss was on the cover of Daily Mail. She was in Vogue wearing a Juicy trench.
Didn't you have Rania of Jordan wearing?
Queen Rania in her hall of
Juicy.
In Juicy Couture, in her Hall of Fame article.
This is why
in Vanity
she's
Fair.
called the godmother of luxury.
in her, when Queen Rania was featured as in the Hall of Fame of Vanity Fair, they wrote an article on her, and she was responding to all these questions. And they said, "What's your favorite piece of clothing?" And she could have said anything, like any big designer. And she goes, "Juicy Couture, long sleeve shirt, covers the hips." And I literally fell. And I think when that article came out, like every headhunter called me again, going, "Work your magic, for our brands." But I think because I just had this like sense of what looks good on people, what's practical, and people just trusted my style as well. And so it was from Princess Beatrice to, Ewan McGregor, like everyone was just wearing this brand. Jude Law, like everyone was just kind of wearing the brand, but it was also not about seeding them like 100 pieces. It was just giving them kind of just these key looks, letting them style the way they want. And
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And meanwhile, you've got married.
I was married then. Yes.
You got married and you moved to Dubai.
I moved to Dubai. Yeah.
Because you had a place here. How
did
that come about?
I got married in 06, 07, and
young bride.
I was a young bride, and I think, to be honest, now in hindsight, I think a lot of it was just, it was like this grand proposal. It was this, all my friends were getting married at that age. I just thought that's what you do. It ended up being just a disaster, and I couldn't get out of it and whatever. But like, it was definitely a lesson learned. And after Juicy, I'd taken this position for Dior, which didn't even really happen because I got married, and it was for the PR office in the UK, and I got married. And next thing I know, like my in-laws and my husband at the time were like, "We're moving to Dubai." And I was like, "Sorry, what?" And I knew that when I was dating him, my in-laws would travel to Dubai, and they would come for the winter, and then they would travel to India or Asia and kind of really use here as a base. And I was traveling to Dubai because I had friends here. I would come here for like the weekends. My ex would do polo training in the winters. So I was familiar with Dubai, and literally I got married and they were like, "No, the in-laws are going to live with you. And, this is the house we're getting." And everything just happened overnight. My life changed. And it was a very difficult conversation to have because I was like, you married someone who is working and building this career. And I just didn't understand what was happening. And I was in a marriage where I was just unhappy, unfortunately. And I really tried to make the best of it because I was committed, and I was like, I made this decision. I'm going to try and make this work. But, life has other plans. And when I came to Dubai, the first 3 weeks, it was just really funny because we were building this house. I was staying in a hotel. And within these 3 weeks, all these people, like my ex-colleagues, started calling me. And they're like, "Rosemin, you're in Dubai. Would you mind doing me a favor?" And that's really how my company started, because this favor was essentially mystery shopping.
Yeah, well, so you were telling me last time we met about going into Jimmy Choo, I think it was. I would
go into
like. So they called you up and they were like, "Rosemin, can you go in and just check out what's happening in the store?"
Can you go in and check out what's happening in the store? And as you can imagine, back then it was such a different business format. So it was a very franchise operated format. So they were like, "Rosemin, can you go into this store? Can you go into this?" Like different ex-colleagues of mine were with different brands. They're like, "Can you just, see what the experience is like?" Because, at the end of the day, a luxury consumer should get a very level of service around the globe. And so I just started giving them feedback. I was like, I think the buy should be a little bit of this. And this is the future of, because I started understanding the region, and just looking at the region, you could see the construction. I mean, we're very lucky now. I mean, this whole road is built. But if you can imagine 20, 25 years ago when I started traveling, it wasn't built. There wasn't all these buildings.
I've seen YouTube videos.
Exactly.
There's one that's Dubai 50 years ago, and it goes through the years. I recommend people.
The transformation. Yeah. And so what I started realizing were all these ex-colleagues of mine who'd never come to the Middle East, and they would only get their reports. And so I started messaging them going, this, not just the city, but this country is changing at such a rapid rate. Women are working. There's a financial center being built as we speak. There's malls being built. The styles that need to come here are women with classic court shoes that can wear them to the office, lower heels, not so much bling. Like women are starting to work. The bags need to be practical, like day bags, tote bags. Like it should be a reflection of kind of the buy in other major cities. And so I started to kind of forecast for them indirectly. And not that I was charging them. They were just my friends that I was literally just emailing. And I'd be like, "No, this, when they're selling the bag, I think you should do more training." And it's really about investing in the brands here. And I would just give them my opinion. And then fast forward, I get a call from Tiffany's in New York, from the VP of marketing. And I remember taking the phone call in my living room, And they were like, hi, we heard you have a luxury goods consultancy firm. And what had happened in that, in those
Yes, I do.
Yes, exactly. And then what had happened, those 3 weeks ended up being 3 months. And what had happened is my name had just got passed around as someone who really understood the market, someone who understood luxury, someone who was bringing the best practice of Europe and bringing it to the Middle East. And that's what I realized my niche was, is that with all my experience of working with these incredible designers and executives and working with these brands, whether it was a Burberry or a Gucci or even a Juicy Couture, is that I was bringing all the best practice to this region. And I started seeing niches in the market where I could give my skill set. And, there was areas to have a PR showroom. And so when the call from Tiffany's came, they were like, we're opening right front and center in the biggest mall in the world. It's called Dubai Mall, and our store is right at the main entrance. We're going to be the first major opening. We want you to, train the staff. We want you to do the PR. The Yellow Diamond's coming. The gemologist is coming. The CEO is coming. Plan the whole week for execution. And that's really how R&Co started. And I remember him asking me, he goes, what's the name of your company? And I literally just said R&Co, which was like my first name and then my middle last name. And I was like, Bespoke Luxury Management. And I remember putting the phone down and I called the lawyer. I was like, can you just register the company? And that was it. And I put a team together, and that was the start of being my first kind of entrepreneur experience.
You call yourself an accidental entrepreneur, don't you?
I call myself an accidental entrepreneur because the company had just mushroomed, and in a good way. And all the press was picking up on it because also we were doing PR in such a different way. We hosted the first breakfast at Tiffany's. We hosted the first charity jazz night. We did a dinner with the CEO and the American ambassador. And it wasn't about doing a dinner with 500 people or, 1,000 people in a ballroom. It was literally like 20 couples. And it was about choosing and selecting consumers that either were loyal to the brand. So as a thank you, you get to have dinner with the CEO, or people who are potential consumers of high-end jewelry. And so we started curating these dinners and breakfast at Tiffany's with like the right group of women. It was 30 women.
And what year are we in here?
So we're in 07, 08, 09. In this like 3-year span, everything had just changed. So all the malls were opening up. So within 3 years, this business had I moved in 07 here. By 08, this company had like started. And then by 09, one brand after the other had just started coming on to R&Co. And I call myself an accidental entrepreneur because back then I was like, I didn't think I was going to have a business. I thought I was going to be in this very secure corporate job, just climbing the ladder. And I would always call myself an accidental entrepreneur because this business, I was learning as it started, like as it went on, I would be learning how to put a team together. And, I reflect back to this time in 2020 when I spoke at Parliament, because then I realized that I wasn't an accidental entrepreneur. Everyone around me, starting from my parents, were entrepreneurs. Then my uncles, like everyone around me, I was always surrounded by entrepreneurs. And that's the environment I was in. And having this pivotal moment of working with Tom Ford, he was an entrepreneur, right? Yeah, he was like, as much as it was a corporate structure, he was dictating, how the corporate atmosphere is, the corporate environment. He was making the decisions. Working at Juicy Couture, I had a GM that I reported to, but essentially I reported to Pam and Gila, who again are entrepreneurs. They're creative directors of Juicy Couture. The CEO at the time was Angela Ahrens, who then went on to Apple and Burberry. And so I was always around these dynamic.
You've been surrounded by some phenomenal people.
And I think when you have mentors like that you're surrounded by, I just wanted to be a sponge and learn. So I would love being in a corporate meeting, even just to be sitting there just listening and learning, taking it all in, because that's how you learn. And so now, fast forward, I realize, okay, I'm probably not an accidental entrepreneur. I was always surrounded by that. So it's no surprise that I like multitasking. I like having a few projects on the go. I have this kind of creative bug in me, or this business bug, where I can always kind of, I get excited to work on something new. And
I love the fact that you have this incredible fashion background, and you've said yourself, but you're business focused, and you might not be the best person at a spreadsheet, but you have a commercial business mind, right?
Yes.
And that's really cool, I think, in the fashion space to sort of recognize that, there are brilliant business leaders and entrepreneurs. It might be fashion, but they're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, and I think the key to success is, and I remember doing this, is when the company started and R&Co just opened overnight, and I had to put a team together. I did a SWOT analysis of myself. And I always tell everyone to do this, because you have to be very honest. And I always think you should do it on your own, like not with people around. Like I don't like doing these.
Don't let anyone else see it.
Yeah, like it's just because it's for you, right?
Yeah.
It's for you to really understand what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what the opportunities are. So I started recognizing when I moved here what the opportunities in the market were. So there was no showroom here, there was no PR sampling. I understood how the sampling system worked in Europe and the US. So I recognized that because the Middle East had such a short lead time, that we could actually take those samples, which wouldn't cost money to the brands, bring them here, and brands could actually shoot it. And I started recognizing those opportunities. I started understanding my strengths of what best practice I can bring with my experience and what I was learning in Europe and bringing it to the region. My weaknesses, not a strong writer. I didn't have a financial acumen. So I wasn't strong in IT, for example. So when I started realizing what my weaknesses are, and I was very honest with myself, that's how I started building my team, because I was like, what is the core vision of the company? What do I want to put out there as a CEO or a founder of a company? But to get that vision out there, I need a really strong team who believes in RR & Co., who believes in my vision, who wants to grow the company with me. And that's how I started building the team for RR & Co.
I love it. I mean, I love a SWOT analysis, but doing it on an individual is really smart. Can you just talk a little bit about how RR & Co. evolved? I mean, you said showrooms, samples,
so we were at
consultancy.
So it ended up being a PR showroom, which is what we were really known for. And then it evolved into doing very niche events. So as time went on, I had a really good proprietary database. So we were doing all the niche events for brands, whether it was the opening of Prada and Miu Miu to, Alice Temperley. When Tom came, we did the opening. We've done Christian Louboutin, we've done his entire launch PR, his celebrating right to his 20th anniversary, shoe signings were literally I wish I had photos of it, but lineups, around the corner, people just standing there with shoes waiting for him to sign the bottom of the shoes. Amazing. So we've had such incredible experiences across the Middle East, whether it's been in Saudi or Lebanon or UAE. And RR & Co. ended up being a PR showroom. We ended up being an advisory. So when brands were coming in, we would introduce them to the local franchise partners or distribution channels. Mm-hmm. And we would do niche events. So that was kind of our core. And we would do product seeding. So really kind of seeding products to these high net worth individuals, and we thought would appreciate the product and would like to try it. So we weren't ever working with influencers or media. It was more on working with clientele. And then the PR side was separate.
And today, RR & Co.
So RR & Co. today is, we don't do PR and we don't have a PR showroom. We closed that part because all the luxury brands have now, fast forward, the business structure's changed here. So they all have their own offices here. They don't need to do a franchise model. So they've all opened their offices from.
So you were talking about having a regional sponsor. That's not a requirement
That's
anymore.
not a requirement anymore. So
and I think that's something that sort of UK listeners might not know. And I think that's relatively new, isn't it, to the region? But until quite recently, you had to have a local partner
for a big business. And now, this country is so amazing where they support female entrepreneurs, they support businesses. So,
and that's something, you're not the first person to, I've now met a lot of women, a lot of entrepreneurs. I think in Saudi, even 50% of entrepreneurs in Saudi Arabia are women.
Amazing.
Which is just an amazing stat. Yeah. And,
listen,
I've met so many incredible female entrepreneurs here. You can't really believe it.
The power of, having financial independence for a woman, even whether it's a small amount or a big amount, whatever it is, to know that you can earn is an incredible power. Mm-hmm. And that's why education is so important. That's why, working on a talent or a skill set or finding your passion is so important. And I really advocate that.
So sorry, you were saying RR & Co. So it's no longer in the showroom.
It's not the showroom space. We still do niche events for brands. So a lot of times, whether it's designers or executives come, we might plan a curated event for them, whether it's a lunch or a presentation. Also for me, I've been here since 2007 and my career has changed. I was very lucky that Dubai TV, spotted me at a very...
Yeah, you've really done it all. Yeah. You've also had, on the side of running your very successful business, you were also an editor at large for Harper's Bazaar Arabia.
Yeah.
And hosting your own TV segment.
Yeah. So within the first year of coming here, I ended up getting a show on Dubai One. It was a live show every Thursday. They gave me a segment and they gave me I think 10, 12 minutes of airtime talking about beauty, fashion, any red carpet events. It was my first kind of entry into television, and I just loved it. And I think that gave me the bug. 2 years into being here, Harper's Bazaar opened. So then I got a call from New York. RR & Co had just taken off. And, my dream was to work at a magazine. So I ended up just being a contributing editor with them. But I was with them for 13 years. And we've done incredible projects together, from World of Fashion to the Best Dressed issues and other commercial projects. So it's just, to be, I think I was the longest running contributing editor there for 13 years. And I left during COVID. And it was just a nice time to be at a magazine that has so much history. I mean, it's been around for over 150 years.
It's a great magazine.
And to watch it support women in the region and give them a platform was just, it was an incredible journey and an incredible experience to be a part of that magazine. And so, I feel like what's been great about this country, it's allowed me to adapt and experience so many different fields that I've had interest in. Yeah. And it's allowed me to kind of go in this media sector. So I think that's kind of where I am now.
And now, God, you're involved in a lot of events. You do a lot of speaking. You have your own podcast. Yeah. You're a very talented broadcaster. Can you just talk a bit about, you said that this country has allowed you to evolve as it has. Can you talk a little bit about the evolution of the UAE, Dubai? Because you've been here a long time.
Yes.
And it must feel unrecognizable almost.
But in the best way. Can I tell you, this country is so incredible. So I truly believe the UAE is the best of East meets West. It holds the sensibility of family values, exceptional service, and anything that you're possibly missing, whether it's your favorite restaurant or hotel, everything is here.
It's here. Yeah.
It's here. But I also love that it's service driven. Like, that's what excites me about this region. And it's constantly evolving.
And it's so open and welcoming, isn't it?
It's open, it's welcoming. You sit in a restaurant, you hear so many different languages. It's so multicultural. It's all about tolerance. There's a minister for tolerance. There's a minister for happiness.
Is there really?
There is, yeah. There's a minister for arts and culture. Where else in the world in 45 minutes you have exposure to that drive from Dubai to Abu Dhabi, you see the most beautiful mosque. They give you a tour. It's just stunning and peaceful. And 5 minutes away, you have the Louvre, the Guggenheim's opening. The best beaches in the world are here. You can have any possible cuisine you want, and I love that in a 30-minute drive, as much as the city's expanding, that you can go into old Dubai and go into the Abras and have this authentic experience. And so I just feel like Dubai is a great example of a country with tolerance and safety. And, I've been here I remember when I got divorced, everyone's like, are you sure you want to be there alone? Are you sure you don't want to go back to London? To be here alone, I never think twice. I get in my car, I feel safe. I get home, I feel safe.
So true.
I just feel very blessed to be here and to have my own business and to be able to create my own income and have that independence and to start my own business and have these companies that help you, build a business and set it up. I can't think of anything better.
Well, it's palpable. I can feel it. I'm here, and
I'm super passionate.
It's amazing. It's amazing,
really
and I get it.
About,
and I felt that welcome from the trips I've had here.
And I will say that as much as I work in the luxury sector, so I might talk about hotels and fashion brands and the malls, but I look at my friends who have families and they're doing the most dynamic experiences, whether it's cycling tracks or SeaWorld just open, anything you can possibly think of for children is here, from experiences. You could be practicing skiing in the summer, and when the winter season comes in Europe.
It's slightly mad, but why not? Anything's
possible. And I just feel like, how amazing is that? So, I think it's very blessed.
Can we touch a little bit on, you've recently got married.
I did get married, yeah.
You've recently got married, but you talked to me before about being single in your 30s, and I thought it was such an interesting conversation. And I remember you said you felt this you were married in your 20s, you were single in your 30s, and there was this pressure to meet someone again, but you wanted to meet the right person, and that it was quite difficult to know where you fit in being single in your 30s. You're now married to a very kind man.
So happy. I'm so happy I waited.
I'd love to hear your experience on that, because Yeah, I think it's an interesting conversation.
When I got divorced, it was a very hard decision to make. I feel very, in hindsight, I look back going, how amazing that I had built this business, because that actually gave me the confidence to be able to walk out and say, I'll figure it out, and I can pay my own rent, and I can put a roof over my head.
And that's why you think as well, financial independence
is so important. And so until when I knew that it was falling apart and you couldn't even put a bandage on it anymore, and I knew I had to leave, the minute I knew I had enough to pay rent, I had the courage to walk out, because I was like, I'll figure it out. And I already had the company, I already had clients. And so it was a matter of just taking that leap and really being independent. But being in your 30s and single, and you feel pressure to settle down. You feel pressure to have, all your friends are having kids, they're on their second child, or like you feel like you're missing out, and you're trying to meet people and people are trying to introduce you, and whatever it is, it's this, maybe it's just for women, this pressure of like settling down. And thank God I was really lucky. I was able to throw myself into work. I also felt very grateful that I had a really great group of girlfriends around that always made me feel included. And I just realized that when you go through these kind of hardships in life, when the failures, everything kind of goes up and down, you really know who your friends are and who's around you. And so I was really lucky at that point to have a really great group of friends. And being in Dubai, I'm very lucky, again, that I feel very blessed that I have friends from different nationalities as well. So I had a great group of friends. I had this business that was evolving, and I just focused on that. And there's this pressure in your 30s, and then you're in your 40s and you're not settled. And at the end, I just ended up meeting this amazing man. And what I realized is that for me, and what I think I speak on my husband's behalf as well, is that we came together based on values and what we wanted our life to be, because both of us have already had this journey.
And knowing who you are.
Knowing who we are, what we like, what we're willing to compromise on. What is that barrier of compromise, and how we want to grow our life together. And I think there's something quite interesting as well, because him and I joke about this, because he's like, oh my God, it was so hard to date you, or to get your attention, because he goes,
yes, he had to be quite persistent.
He had to be really persistent. And, he goes, when I was dating, like, I'd buy a girl a glass of champagne or take her to a nice restaurant. And I was like, well, I don't drink and I can afford my own meal. Or I'd been to that restaurant. It wasn't like he was impressing me. What was impressing me was that he was thoughtful, that he was kind. He would remember a conversation that we had and reference back, or started understanding what I liked. And, the way he was with my family. I mean, my parents are in their 80s, so they're a lot older. And, you have to have patience to be with elders, and how he got along with my brother and my nephew and my sister and my brother-in-law. And these people are the core, and how he was with my best friends. And so he's like, I think you put me through a test, because every time he would come, I would do a dinner with my friends and their husbands. And I said, listen, these people are like the core of my life, because my family live in the US and Canada. And so we're only going to see them a few times a year. These are my friends that I see.
You've got to get them to like you.
Yeah, because they're my family in Dubai. And so he started getting along with all their husbands, and my friends started to fall in love with him, and they're like, Rosemin, he's great. And I think that was just really nice, because I think you want people who are in your core, and you want to build a life with them as well as the future goes on. But I think getting married in your 40s is really about family values and how you want to grow together and communicating. I think that's really important.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Can we just talk a little bit about starting a business and advice that you would give to others? What would you say to women who might have a business idea, might have started something, but it's early days? As somebody who has been very successful, who's run her own business for a long time, what would your advice to those women be?
So my best advice to any entrepreneur or anyone starting out, whether it's in social media or whether it's a small business, is one, know who you are as a brand. So I think a lot of people here just know me as Rosemin. And so even my media deck that I shared with you is just the Rosemin, and it's very much clear about who I am. So what my experience is, but also what are the charities that I'm passionate about. These are the charities that not only I sit on boards for, but they're the ones I want to advocate for. I'm very clear about who I am, what my brand values are. And when I'm doing brand collaborations, I tell brands how I dress. I dress more on the modest side, so I don't kind of wear backless or super cleavage or whatever it is. I'm very specific about who I am, what I stand for. And I don't know if that comes with age maybe, but it comes with experience. And so I'm very clear about who I am, what I want to do. And so it's really hard because sometimes when you really do need the money and you get these brand collaborations and it's hard to say no, but I'm like, it's not authentic for me to partner with that brand.
So being authentic.
Authentic is so important. And what I realize is that sometimes I'd be like, oh my God, I really need that. Like that project would really help, but I just know it's not authentic to me. It's not something that I would stand for. It's not a product that I would use, for example, or I'd keep in my own home. But when I would say no to that, it's really funny because when you close one door, something always opens, right? Like that's just the way the world is.
So really investing in your own brand, being true to you.
Knowing who you are. Yeah. Being authentic to who you are, being very present is really important.
What do you mean by that?
When you're here, like right now I'm with you. I'm sitting across the table. My mind's not wandering. I'm so excited to be here. I was excited that we met each other in London. And so it's really about being present. I think in a time where all of us, our minds are racing and we're constantly strolling, the attention span is so quick, right? So it's really about being present. And for me, I do that by having a very organized schedule. So my calendar on my phone, or my assistant, when she prints it out on the day in the mornings and puts it on my desk, it's a very defined schedule. Like it says where my meetings are, travel time, whether it's getting ready time, like everything is very defined. I like at the end of the day, knowing when I go to sleep that I've used my time wisely. And it's not about being overpacked with work. It might just even be relaxing at home in the evening because that's my downtime. But at least I know I am enjoying my home. I'm enjoying sitting with friends, having dinner at home. Like,
yeah, it's good advice.
So I just think that everyone has the same 24 hours. You have 24 hours, I have 24 hours. Like that's just the way the world is. You don't get an hour more, I don't get an hour more, right? But it's like, how are you spending your time? So for you, it's probably with the kids and business and traveling here and probably have jet lag and you're exhausted, right? But it's like, how are you using your time, right? And so for me, I want to go to sleep knowing that I had a great day, or I spent
your day well.
I spent my day well. And so I would say that's my advice. I would say really doing a SWOT analysis. That's a game changer.
I like that a lot.
And constantly learning. Like I like listening to podcasts. If I can do a course or if there's like a lecture or a guest speaker in town, I'm always kind of very happy to go to a conference and sit and listen.
So important. And do you feel at, 40 something, early 40s, do you feel as driven as ever?
I feel that there's clarity.
You feel like you know where you're going and where your focus is?
I feel like I know where I'm going. I know what I want my life to be like. I know the priorities. I feel very blessed. I have incredible friends around me. I have an incredible family, and I feel very grateful that these are the people that I want in my life and I want to grow with. I'm excited to start new businesses. I'm excited to explore just the next stage of life. And that is, married and having family and all of that stuff to come, inshallah. But I'm excited for this new chapter. And I think that's kind of what's getting me up in the morning.
Well, I wish you so well in your next chapter. We'll all be watching and following. And
thank you so much.
You really are one in a million. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So much for joining me. I've loved chatting to you.
Thank you.
That's it for today. If you enjoyed that, then do please rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends to listen to, and we'll be back soon. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.